when I first started using alcohol, I genuinely fell in love with it. Of course, later on, when you find out that it's killing you, doesn't love you back, well, life gets a lot more complicated at that point. I think statistically, it's like by far the most dangerous, deadly drug ever. But I do think it's interesting that if you were like, "Hey, why don't we make a business deal over at this one place where we're going to put a fancy umbrella on our meth pipe, or I'm going to do heroin, but I'm going to make it smell like lemonade." If you did that, nobody would show up. It's insane. The same poison, just kind of dressed up different, and suddenly it's totally okay.
Hey guys, today I am joined by Justin. He is 12 years sober, a veteran, and has quite the background with alcohol or addiction, all of the above. How are you today, Justin?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's interesting. I kind of feel like when you talk about alcohol, you're talking about a certain type of love story. Not a good one, not a happy
Right?
ending type of love story, but um, it is interesting that some of us, and I'm sure maybe people can relate, maybe they can't, but when I first started using alcohol, I genuinely fell in love with it.
Hmm.
Um, so, of course, later on, when you find out that it's killing you, doesn't love you back, well, life gets a lot more complicated at that point.
It's like a toxic relationship.
It's like a toxic relationship with a celebrity who you'll never meet.
That's a good way to put it.
That alcohol isn't doing its part.
So you were 8 years of blackout, drunkenness, multiple hospitalizations, rehab failures, kind of some family history of alcohol abuse, and you're an Air Force veteran?
All that stuff is correct. The Air Force treated me incredibly well and was very patient with my many. I wouldn't say shenanigans. I never got a DUI. I never got into a bar fight, anything like that. But I was pretty unreliable. I went to work and did my job. I'm real proud of what I did throughout my military service, but um, due to a lot of kind of factors early on, including some kind of messed up custody situations and just different personal factors, I definitely let it overtake my life somewhere along the lines. So yeah, it was from the time I started drinking, which was of course very young. I just realized that, oh, this is just the best. This is just the best thing ever. And then it just continued to get worse from there. So yeah, after over to a point of blackout drinking, um, yeah, over about 8 years, I became a pretty much a daily user, and despite rehab, which was kind of a great 30 days to get away and restart, give the liver a little bit of time to catch up. But right after that, I mean, I was right back at it. It was really difficult to try to allow rehab to take my true love away from me, in a way.
The one that was always there for you, right?
Always,
It
always
always
there.
take, take, take. Never gave, just always took.
And I happily gave. I think that another gentleman who was on your show recently said, nothing was ever taken from me by alcohol or otherwise. I willingly gave it over. And that's exactly what happened. There was a lot of different aspects of my life that I willingly gave over to alcohol addiction. I'm very grateful to be sober. I talk about God a lot. I'm going to try to keep the specifically to um, my faith. I'm a Christian, but specifically, I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum because I don't want to kind of alienate anybody. Because I think that your relationship with God is very personal. But for
Mm.
me, at least, as a full blown alcoholic and a very hopeless addict, if it weren't for God, I wouldn't be here 1,000 times over. If life were
I have a
fair,
lot
I'd
of
be dead.
I have a lot of podcasts and a lot of people testimony to that.
Um,
They
the
found God through their journey.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, a little rock bottom reflection, waking up in jail and not remembering why you were facing felonies must have been terrifying. What went through your mind when you realized the depth of the situation you were in?
It was a slow boil. I mean, I knew things were getting worse and worse in my addiction, and over the course of a couple of years, as I faced getting, I mean, I was honorably discharged because I was unreliable, but nevertheless, I mean, I got kicked out of the Air Force as a 12-year um, veteran active duty service as a
Oh,
E6. I was not given a choice. They had to get rid of me, and so I lost this career that I identified with my whole adult life very strongly. My school, going to school, that approach, that was a farce. Basically everything that I had, I had given up. I mean, I had given up one relationship at a time. I think I could tell you there was a time I was sitting in my apartment that I was living in when I was just before I got sober at my worst, and I had this revelation. Wow, I'm probably never going to have sex ever again. And it bummed me out. So I drank more. And I mean, I'm it's kind of funny, but I mean, I was being serious. Had resigned myself to this very young, very, pathetic alcoholic death. And I think that's what everybody around me kind of expected. I had long
Mm.
since given up on all of my dreams as an athlete, my dreams as a, um, an employee. Oh God, it'd be nice to make $100,000 one year, and they completely had long since given up on that. I mean, any kind of goals or ambitions that, I would like to have a nice car. I would like to have a nice house. I'd long since given up on even daring to dream about having those things. And I was just kind of playing the game, seeing it through, um, to the end, or so I thought. Um, I'll tell you what happened. I was a daily blackout drinker. I didn't have a family. I had a couple of friends, but pretty much I lived by myself. I operated by myself. I woke up, did the bare minimum I had to do to get through the day, to do whatever it was I had to do, and then it was, right back to alcohol. Well, and this is, mind you, this is after failing rehab. This is after being admitted to the ER and blowing a point 0.4, not a point oh 0.04, but a point 0.4 on a breathalyzer. Just all these different consequences. And by the way, even now, 12 years later, like like I said, I did not emerge unscathed. My body has paid a price in a lot of ways, and we can get a little more specific about that later. But
Yeah.
it was terrible. I hated myself. I was ashamed. I did not, but and yet I was uninterested in change. It was one of those things. People always say you want to quit. You want to quit. I did not want to quit, but I was willing to entertain the idea that I might have a desire to want to quit. As
Mhm.
tenuous and difficult to understand as that is, I think, a lot of people will probably understand what I mean. On paper, if somebody told me, wow, all you'd have to do is quit alcohol and you could have all these things in your life. Yeah, I would love to have those things, but I don't want to do the one thing that I have to do to make it there. Something had to
Ooh,
happen. And I was
yeah.
very blessed and very lucky. The best thing that ever happened to me was getting arrested. I woke up in jail. I had no idea why. I did not. It took a couple days to get arraigned, so I didn't even get my paper with my charges on it for the first day and a half I was in there. All I know is I was just, I mean, terrified. The funny thing about jail is jail is not that bad, and I could certainly understand where a lot of addicts would be like, okay, well, I either wake up in jail, I wake up not in jail, same, one way or the other. My life sort of sucks outside of jail. So what's the difference if I'm in here? And I can relate to that. The scariest thing about jail to me was how comfortable a lot of the other people that were in jail were with the idea of being in jail. I was terrified, not of being in jail. I was terrified of becoming comfortable with the idea of just
Oh.
waking up in jail and having it be just another day. Um, Earlier I mentioned falling in love. I love story with alcohol when I first got drunk for the first time very young. I was in love. It was love at first sip. That is what kept me coming back. Well, it would be dishonest for me not to mention that I had a love at first sight kind of later in my life when I didn't want to adopt a dog and I went to the shelter and I experienced something that I never thought I would,
Mm.
which was love at first sight with my dog. Um, while I was in jail, I've had this dog for a couple years now. Um, she is just everything to me. I didn't know what she was doing. I didn't know what she was up to. So the scariest thing about jail was not knowing if my dog was going to be taken care of or if she was going to be okay or not. That led me to some very, very long. I didn't sleep one wink in the couple days I was there. Led me some long introspective moments, and eventually I had a God moment. I had a God epiphany, and I think that's no matter what I gave up and no matter how bad I suffered leading up to that point, it took that moment for God to really make me understand how incredibly helpless I was and how no matter how much naltrexone I took, no matter how many therapy sessions I went to, No matter how many little miniature fines I had to pay here and there, that I was going to continue to fail to try to get myself sober over and over again until I stopped trying and gave it over to God. With that said, again, I'm not going to beat the God thing to death because I think that, as I said, that's a very personal um, thing that everybody has their own path to. But God put different things in my life that were clearly put there by Him on purpose. One of which, of course, was my dog. After 3 days in jail, I finally got bailed out, um, and turns out that she was fine that whole time. She had been taken care of, but that's what really made me start listening and made me start realizing you're going to die. You're going to die, and not only are you going to die, but you're going to take a lot of other people, and more importantly, you're going to take this animal with you who does nothing but love you and show up for you every day. You're
Mm.
going to take her with you. She's going to miss you. It's cliche to say be the person your
Oh,
dog thinks you are, but that's
right? Oh my gosh, that like just gets your heart.
saved my life. She saved my life.
Yeah.
The other thing that God put in my life, of course, was a love of strength training. Um, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I later discovered strength sports like powerlifting. Later discovered sports like strongman, and I always thought I'm too short for that. That's for tall guys, but I never did. I mean, I had been lifting weights and working out and stuff since I was about 12 or 13. But I had long since kind of stopped that. My Air Force career, I was always that guy. I was always kind of that guy who was always kind of built, kind of in shape. I could always, and even though I was blackout drunk, I would go lift weights. I would go home, get drunk, go to work the next day, go to the gym, and had this kind of identity, and I always loved it. But I had stopped that several years earlier. Well, after I got out of jail, I dealt with my court stuff. Not going to beat that to death, but let's just say I never got charged with a felony. I'm sorry, I got charged. I was able to plead down. Don't have a felony on my record now. I was able to do was a one time probation type of thing. So that I'm incredibly grateful for. What I did is I broke into my neighbor's apartment and I passed out on their floor because I thought it was my apartment. I'm not the only person who's done that. As it turns out in recovery, when you go to AA and spend any time around the AA groups, you will meet people who tell your story, which is really
Yeah.
weird. Like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I did that once. Oh, I've done that a couple times. And I'm like, what? That to me, that was crazy. I genuinely thought I was locked out of my house. So I broke in, went to sleep. The cops came and found me curled up anyway.
Were they like scared of you or something?
No, I don't think anybody was there. My neighbors were home. It was an empty apartment that was locked. Um,
Oh.
and I just kind of went in, thought, oh, well, somebody rearranged my apartment, and it passed out. What was that? And again, I don't remember any of that. That's what I was pieced together. So in the end, it was relatively harmless, but on paper, that's a couple felonies. That's felony B&E. They could have charged me with a residential burglary, that type of stuff. Of course, I had to get a
Yeah.
lawyer and go through all that stuff. It was terrible. Well, let me tell you, after I got out of jail and facing the fear of having to deal with the consequences of my own drunken actions, there was a time for several months afterwards where, for the first time in my life, the last thing I wanted to do was drink. I couldn't sleep. I could barely eat. I was an anxious mess for just, I mean, a really long time. I didn't have a job. I didn't have money coming in. Um, Apart from certain like veteran benefits and things like that, that was what kept me going. But I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues, and I, excuse me, managed to stay sober because I just didn't want to drink. I could not divorce the idea for the first time. Very blessed for the first time in my life. I could not divorce the idea of drinking from dealing with the consequences that I was dealing with. And that is a fantastic thing. I think that when it comes to learning humility, like humiliation is a very good way to learn humility. Worrying about having to face the legitimate consequences of my own actions
Right.
really made me think about my own actions and how I got there. And then I was, as I said, I was very, very blessed because for the first time in my life, without drugs, without therapy, without necessarily AA, I did not want to drink. I couldn't think about a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, that was, don't think about elephants. What are you going to think about? Elephants, right? So
Right.
I know you've had that conversation before where people they focus so much on alcohol and not drinking that they end up that's kind of all they think about and all they talk about. Well, that you know, the first little brief period of time that you're in sobriety, all you have to think about and talk about is alcohol and how hard you're trying to work to avoid it. So it takes a while to get to that point where you could start thinking about, okay, I'm putting alcohol behind me. Let me start focusing on what I do have.
I like that you bring that up because a lot of people, yeah, in the comments, they always ask, when do you stop thinking about alcohol? Or in the beginning of my journey, people would ask, why are you even doing this? Doesn't it make you want to drink? And I'm like, well, to me, it keeps me accountable doing my channel. But for those that are like, when do you start missing alcohol or like not thinking about it? When is it just, when do you stop craving it? I'm like, I think it's just per person. Like, there's no actual answer for it, but if you're dwelling on it, like, "Oh my gosh, I maybe I should drink, maybe I shouldn't drink." I think that's what's gonna spiral you back to drinking.
No, I agree. I think when you're first in sobriety and all you can think about is alcohol and all you can think about is what do I have to do today to not drink? I think you're going to be stuck in that for a while. And I mean,
Mhm.
again, I can't speak for everybody. It is, as you said, individual, but there is a certain period of time you will have no choice but to kind of be stuck in it. But eventually you have to make that conscious decision to start thinking about what's next. What does the next chapter hold?
Yes.
What is in my life if alcohol isn't? And kind of one of the mantras I live by now is I can do whatever I want. The only thing I can't do is drink.
Right.
Beyond that, literally anything I want to do, I can do. If I'm drinking, there's a very long list of things I can't do. Um, and it really is pretty amazing that once you start thinking, once you get past that, I say I empathize. I said I sympathize very much with people who are very much stuck in it early in sobriety. I mean, yes, it takes a while, and it's hard. It's so hard, and you know that it's very difficult.
Especially when that's all you know how to do. That your day literally revolves around when you're getting that next drink. Just like when people have food addictions. I mean, you're just constantly thinking of your next meal, just like alcoholics, they're just constantly thinking of their next drink. Oh, should I go to this party, this kid's birthday party? Is it early enough? Because I got to start drinking at this time. I mean, our lives just literally revolve around alcohol. Should I pack this? Should I make sure that I'm sneaking this, hiding that?
Hundred
It's a
percent.
job.
No, absolutely. It's so true, and it happens somewhere along. I don't think anybody can really put a finger on the moment in your life where it takes over, but somewhere along the lines, our lives, or at least my life, that's what happened. The balance tipped from let me worry about my things in my life and drink to okay, I'm going to worry about drinking, and everything else is just something I have to move around and change to accommodate my drinking because that's ultimately all I care about. Which
Yeah.
was true. I mean, if to gauge if you were to gauge my priorities by my actions, all I cared about was alcohol.
Yeah.
So
It's a selfish substance. I mean, we're selfish on while we're drinking the substance or, addicted to it because and I like how you say I can do so much now versus when you were drinking, you were limited to what you can do. I don't think people realize that. They're just so focused on, well, I can't drink. What are you talking about? Well, when you're drinking, you can't do anything.
yeah,
So there's a whole entire life out there. But they're like, well, life's going to be boring without alcohol. No, it's not. You have a world of things to do. You don't have to worry about driving somewhere, how you're talking, what you're doing. You can actually literally just get in your car any time of the day and drive somewhere and go do something.
it's magical and it's incredibly simple. But yeah, people will say, "Well, what do you do if you don't drink? Well, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" I could do whatever I want. If we want to go do
Yeah.
karaoke or that's not everybody's thing, but if we were going to go to watch a band play or I don't know any of the kind of thing you would ordinarily do with alcohol involved, you could still do that thing. You don't need alcohol. Early in
Yeah.
sobriety, it's probably not a great idea to go to do too many of those things and be surrounded by alcohol, but yeah, it's not that long before you kind of realize, hey, I could still do whatever I want. I don't have to drink.
And I
Yes.
And I think that if you're doing some of these things in the very beginning or like the early stages of sobriety, you have to surround yourself with people that support you and will go to a concert or a show, whatever, and not drink also. Like you can't expect to stay in your same group that you always go with and be, strong enough not to drink if that's all you know what to do with that group.
I'm sure you're right. I was very lucky in that I did not have a group. I had run all my friends and family out of my life for such a long
Oh.
time before I stopped drinking that my group was I got to have a little bit of, even though I still lived in the same town and still knew a lot of the same people, we had long since written each other off, and I was able to start over with a new group. So one of the biggest things I did, again, in addition to my dog, was the gym. And I did go to AA. I did not, just to be clear, I'm not better than AA. I stopped going after a certain period of time. It became a little bit more. Um, there was a lot of things I wasn't real comfortable with about AA, and I don't want to spend too much time kind of running AA into the ground. It's a great thing that helps a lot of people, but
Mm.
for me, I became a little bit uncomfortable with some of the things they were talking about, or some AA groups that are a little bit more like, I don't know, they're a little bit too high school social, whatever. But having AA was great. Being around people who were able to talk about sobriety was great, but also just the fact that you could go to a meeting on a Friday night and then afterwards they're like, "Hey, let's go get a burger." And you're like, "Oh, wow. I can go get a burger with some friends and nobody's going to drink." Like that's pretty amazing. So if I got nothing else, excuse me, if I got nothing else out of AA, I got that. So that's very cool. But also I started going back to the gym, which is something I always loved and
Mm.
had long since given up on. Um, when I was first in sobriety, I was dealing with a lot of issues with my liver, and of course, just just issues, the stuff we get to deal with, after kind of over a decade of excessive poisoning. But the idea that you could go to the gym and do your thing, whatever your thing is, enjoy yourself, get the dopamine hits, get the positive reinforcement from stuff that you're doing. I mean, these are healthy outlets. I guess I'd say it's a little bit more of a healthy addiction because it is an addiction, but it's
Mhm.
certainly a much better addiction, where there is benefits and positives to it. That became a very big thing for me. I mean, obviously, I own a gym now, and a lot's happened with my kind of athletic career. Again, I won't bore you with that, but
No, we want well, I mean, I'm curious to know. I'm sure other people are gonna wanna know also.
um, well, we I was able to really get into it, really get into the gym, and before I knew it, a lot of those dreams that I didn't dare dream as an adult, that I dreamed as a kid, um, were able to come true. I was able to start thinking, hey, maybe I should make a goal. Hey, maybe I should put in some work. Hey, maybe I should see that goal through. Oh, I did that. What's next? Um, the short and long term goal setting is a skill that I think I had, I mean, long since lost, if I ever even had it before recovery. But the idea that you can actually set short term goals leading up to a long term goal is is just it's priceless. It's a revelation, or at least it was a revelation in my life, and it's something that with alcohol or with any kind of addiction keeping me down, and most people, I would assume, it's just never going to happen.
Mm.
I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I did. At a year and a half sober, I got on stage, um, in a
A year and a half sober? You got on stage?
I did. That's not the sport for me. It went okay, um, and it was fun, but that's not for me. The idea of dieting and all that stuff. I mean, I kind of did it, but not for me. So I switched to powerlifting, which is less about what you eat and more about just showing up and following a program and trusting the process. I had some pretty good success in powerlifting. Did that for a couple years, and then at the age of 39, I did my first strongman competition. I'm 5'9". Okay, so strongman, if you've ever seen it on TV, those guys are usually like 6.5 feet, the top, the top pros in the world. I'm short, so never thought I'd be good at it. Well, yeah, it turns out I'm actually pretty good at it,
Great.
which is fantastic. But I mean, you still have to work hard. Um, you still have to,
Consistency.
oh, absolutely, be consistent, be
Mm.
conscientious about what you do. Not so much limiting the dieting, but you have to make sure that when it comes to like if you're going to eat junk food or if you're going to eat good food, you have to make sure you eat all the good things, and then if you want to leave room for the junk, you can.
Balance.
Yeah, balance. Whatever that. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, I call it the 80-20 rule, and I mean,
Yes,
everybody that knows me, they know that, like, 80% of the time I'll do good, 20% of the time, whatever.
absolutely. I think that's just a magical ratio to have um,
Yeah.
in one's life. Um, a 80-20 ish. We'll call it the 80-20 ish rule for me.
When it comes to being overall healthy, not when it comes to moderating alcohol.
Right. No. Well, the thing is, I think there's such a huge chunk of the population of the planet that can 80-20 their alcohol intake. That ain't me.
No, not me either.
And I don't think, and I will never understand. I will never, when people talk about, oh, they only drink a couple times a year, maybe on New Year's Eve, they drink a little bit much. And then, for a while after that, they have like a dry January or whatever. I've never once heard somebody say dry January until a couple days ago. I was listening to one of your guests say, "Oh, I got sober for dry January," and then I stretched it out. Dry January, what is that? January sucks. I don't want to be dry for January. If I'm gonna drink, if I'm
I
gonna be
was
sober,
exactly. I was always the type that was like, well, I'll do kind of dry January. I mean, my version, but I would still drink on the weekends.
start.
I never partook in any of those.
Oh, I don't get it. I think, yeah, and then when you're drinking, when you're a dedicated drinker, your weekend kind of starts on Thursday, wraps up on Sunday night sometime. I don't know.
Yep.
That's I was that.
Hungover on Monday, Tuesday, back, finally feeling good by Wednesday, back to drinking on Thursday.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I think that was never me. I was once I decided I was going to go hard. I drank every day. I never
Mhm.
really. The idea of. I mean, this is like regardless of whether I had to go to work in the Air Force, if I had to go work on an airplane or whatever, I did not. Um, the idea of going sober for 24 hours, the idea of going to bed at the end of the night without any alcohol in my system terrified me. It was terrifying. I would do anything I could to avoid that fear of not sleeping, that fear of dealing with my demons. I mean, addicts, we get to deal with these internal internal ideas, this internal turmoil inside of our minds that is just horrible, impossible to describe because it's such a personal attack, because it's us attacking ourselves exactly where we know we're weak. Um, the idea of dealing with that over a night of sobriety it terrified me. So I didn't do it for such a long time.
They sorry, I don't wanna interrupt you, but I
No.
feel like a lot of people use "I can't sleep without alcohol" as an excuse to keep drinking.
Yes, I did. I did for sure. Not, I could, couldn't sleep, didn't want to. Even if I knew I was going to stay up all night, that's not the fear. I wasn't afraid of not getting enough sleep. We've all done things tired before.
Mhm.
It's not the idea of not getting enough sleep. It's the idea of trying to go to sleep and dealing with whatever it is your mind decides to put you through while
Yeah.
you're trying to sleep. To me, that's terrifying, or it was. As it turns out, yes, not sleeping is not the worst thing. Early in sobriety, I'm sure I'm not alone when I could say that the first, many, many, many months of sobriety, my sleep was terrible. I'm sure you probably experienced something
I
similar.
mean, and I still don't get the best sleep all the time, but that's just because, like, I have kids in my bed, dogs in my bed. I mean, y sometimes my brain just doesn't shut off, but, I mean, I wish had a way to track my sleep. Right. All the wishes I could have gone back and, like, actually track my sleep when I was drinking versus tracking it now, but I didn't ever think the alcohol affected my sleep. I was so naive to alcohol.
Pretty, it's It's amazing, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
5 hours of sleep in sobriety is more than is better than 10 hours passed out with
Yeah.
alcohol in your system.
Yeah.
And if somebody had told me that back then, I wouldn't have believed them.
Mm.
In fact, I'm sure probably people probably did tell me that, and I was like, "Bah, whatever, liar." I think another one of your guests recently I saw she said something along the lines of I thought anybody who ever told me they were more than a year sober, I thought they were lying. Anybody who told me they were 5 years sober, I thought they were lying. Anybody who told me they were 10 years sober, well, okay, you obviously weren't an alcoholic. I would judge people that way. I would gauge other people's claims of sobriety based on my own addiction. And I
Mhm.
so I 100% agree with what she said. I think I same thing. If somebody said, I've been sober, coming up on a year," I'd be like, "Well, either you're not an alcoholic or you're a liar." Because if you had a year sober, I guess I don't know. I thought maybe somebody with a year sober would be like the CEO of a big company somewhere. So I thought there would be some sort of really just tangible thing that you'd see in someone's life once they made it to a whole entire year.
Yeah. But I think I've, been talking about this a lot more lately, 'cause, one of the people I sober coach, you know, getting through that first year is all about getting through the firsts, and then you start focusing on the healing part. So, yeah, that first year is brutal, and when you get to that first year, most people don't make it to the first year because they can't get through all the firsts, they can't get through those temptations, cravings, but then when I for me, yes, getting through all those first, I had to navigate them, but then going into that second year and, you know, being like, "This is why, this is why, that is why, this is how," these all these things just start coming to you, and then you start healing, and then, that's when the work begins. You can put down the bottle, sure, I can put down the bottle for a year, but am I gonna work on myself?
Um, you're absolutely right. A year sober is a 12-month sequence of firsts. That
Yeah.
first speeding ticket or DUI roadblock that you go through sober, and it's kind of mind blowing that
Mhm.
the first time you realize that you stopped at a stop sign and just in time for a kid to run out in the street, and you think, wow, if I was still driving around kind of next day drunk like I used to do, I probably wouldn't have stopped at that stop sign as well as I did. I mean,
Yeah.
the first time you, I guess, yeah, the first time you get that, you get a decent night's sleep and you wake up and you realize, wow, I can go do something that I wanted to do relatively early in the morning. Um,
Yeah.
I have an appointment I have to get to at 7. I have to wake up at 6. That's going to be miserable. Wait, no, it's not. I can do that now. I can
Yeah.
go for ice cream after dinner and then go home, go to bed, wake up the next morning, do something in the next morning. Just these simple concepts that I think so many people kind of take for granted, as they should, are mind-boggling in that first year in sobriety. And it's amazing. And even it's 12 years sober, I'm still thinking back at the kind of profound profundity of a lot of those firsts.
So uh, so when did you know that this was solid for you?
Sobriety or
Yeah.
alcohol? Because
Sobriety.
alcohol right away. No, sobriety when it was
Yeah.
solid. Hmm, that's a good question. I guess I'd say like within a few weeks of being arrested and facing some very very serious criminal penalties. And again, it took months to iron that out. So I lived my life in a state of fear for a long time, as I should. That's what I deserved. I realized it took, and I realized I was actually maybe going to stay sober, or maybe going to have the ability to continue to stay sober consistently. Probably a couple months in when I realized, okay, the future as far as the criminal stuff holds what it's going to hold. That's a
Mhm.
month or two away, but for now, I'm looking for jobs. I did end up getting a job kind of while I was in limbo there. I was going to the gym consistently. I was like cooking and eating. And eventually I kind of got to a point where to some degree I could actually get some sleep. And once I realized, wow, the future is going to hold what it's going to hold. Today is going to hold what it's going to hold. but I have a little bit of control over today. I can't control what's going to happen in a couple months.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing is I'm actually kind of enjoying the idea of just having a day of sobriety, but also just having a day, having a normal day of getting up, maybe, going to the gym, going to apply for a job or whatever it is I was doing prior to getting a job. And then just taking care of the sort of adult stuff that I had never really done correctly in such a long time. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the idea of just having a regular, normal human day.
Normal human day. I love that.
So it's when when I was drinking, it was foreign. It was something I just really struggled to understand.
Going through the motions.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the okay, so the pink cloud, I think, you've kind of talked about recently with somebody. I think there's the idea that you have this pink cloud, you can sit on the pink cloud of sobriety for so long. If you play your cards right, if you do the work, and if you kind of deal with your life, in a certain way, you can make that pink cloud last a really long time. And I think somewhere along the lines, I climbed on top of that pink cloud, and I really stayed on it for a very, very long time. Um, the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life, ever, I had to deal with sober. Um, my had mentioned my dog earlier, and I don't, I don't want to get too into it, but when she passed away a couple years ago, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, I have other dogs and cats and stuff now, but and I love them. Don't get me wrong, but they never saved my life. When my dog passed away, I was losing the most important relationship that I had ever had. Um, that was by far the hardest thing that I've ever dealt with. And I was 100% sober, through that whole thing. And something changed. I was just shy of 10 years sober when that happened. Something changed inside me, and I realized that, as important as it is to think about, I want to stay sober just for today. I want to stay sober for the next 24 hours. I want to stay sober for the next, 6 months because I've got some big things coming up. I realized at that moment that I would never drink again, ever. And I know that's kind of a bold statement for somebody who's in recovery to make. And I'm not saying it because I feel so empowered because I got through this tragic loss. I'm saying it because she spent her life making sure that I had a reason to stay sober. And when she passed away, I can't think of anything that I could do to betray what she did for me worse than to go back to drinking. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'll never make a terrible decision. I'm not going to sit here and say
Mhm.
I'll always be fine. I'm not going to sit here and say, that I won't, I don't know, whatever. But I will never drink again. I will never willingly put alcohol in my mouth ever again. Um, and and that knowing that that's a commitment I'm making to myself is comforting, not just to me, but it also allows me to feel like I'm doing something to act out my honoring her memory every day.
They hold such a special place in our hearts, and, those people that don't have animals, I don't think there's just nothing better than that love. I mean, I can feel your heart, like, because I think about that, I'm like, "What the heck am I gonna do if I lose," like, I call her my heart, like, I have 2 dogs. One is my, like, love bug, and, I mean, I don't know what I would do without her, so getting through something that tragic and, like, experiencing that type of grief while you're sober is kudos to you for staying sober and making the decision to, like, never drink again. I mean, it's I understand what you're saying, but you don't wanna betray your dog because, I mean, that's a huge thing.
And that's exactly how I would feel about it. And again, I wouldn't be making that statement if I weren't just very blessed to have well managed mental health situation. if I didn't have, and I mean, I'm married. Don't get me wrong. I love my wife, and I don't want to get too much into it because, like I said, she's a whole nother adult. I don't want to talk too much for somebody else. But as far as what happened and me being sober and my dog being kind of the only one there for me, that that is a whole nother chapter that would be impossible to just rewrite. So I'm I was very blessed to have her, and dealing with her loss was, like I said, by far and away the hardest thing I've ever dealt with. I think in addiction and recovery, we talk a lot about trauma and
Mm.
past, past trauma and past reasons why we ended up suffering the way we do, et cetera. And that's not, I'm not invalidating that. I'm not here to say that that's not important, but I really feel like it's not terribly useful for me to try to sort through my life and figure out things that are traumatic and try to work through it and try to heal from XYZ. Because if I was to sit here and say, well, I need to heal from my childhood trauma or my trauma as a young adult or things I dealt with, during a certain period that were really terrible. Um, and once I heal from that, then I'll be fine. I don't really think that serves too much of a purpose, because to think, okay, well, I have to heal from these specific traumas in my past in order to start caring about my life moving forward kind of implies that I'm never going to deal with trauma or never going to deal with hard situations in the future.
Mhm.
We're always going to deal with hard things in sobriety, in addiction, in life. If somebody gets cancer, I mean, there's so many different things that can come up that'll absolutely just destroy our journey of healing and on all that stuff. And I mean, it'll happen to all of us, not to sound like a bummer, but if I focus too much on things that I've been through and trying to heal from that, then I'm realizing how fragile my sobriety is, and then I have to wonder, well, is it all it's going to take is one traumatic incident to knock me off of the wagon and to make me, justify a binge in the future? And no, I mean, I have to focus on, and again, I'm not invalidating what anybody's been through. Um, I get that it's important to work through some of those things, but for me, it's all about looking towards the present and kind of the near future, not the far future. There's nothing I can do about that, but it's really kind of focusing on the present and realizing that anything I might have dealt with in the past that's traumatizing is as terrible as it was. I cannot trauma proof myself for the future.
Yep.
We just have to deal with life on life's terms, as the cliche goes. It's going to deal us the cards it does. Um, I am very blessed that my dog, I mean, we were together for 11 years. She passed away 10 years into sobriety. So the vast majority of our life together, I was sober for, um, which is something that I'm incredibly grateful for. Um, and it's largely because of her I have to thank for that. And again, because of God, because God had blessed me by putting her in my life, by putting the gym in my life, by putting kind of fantastic job opportunities that I certainly don't deserve in my life. My
Because you
wife,
own your own gym, right?
yes, yeah, my wife who I met sober, and she's never known me to drink. We uh, sorry we so we've been married almost almost 9 years now. We've been together almost 11. We so I met her relatively early in sobriety, but we decided to complicate our lives kind of recently and opened our own gym, and we actually opened a barber shop because that's what she does. So she quit working for the man, and we opened her up a business. We opened the gym. I made some we made some very tough kind of financial decisions where I had to scale back at my job where I was making kind of good money, and um, decided to take this kind of gamble on ourselves and do something that we actually loved and cared about. Um, my gym, I don't want to mention the name. I don't want to sound like I'm dropping a shameless plug, but it is very much a
No,
passion.
you can totally plug. That's totally fine.
Well, it's called Iron Sharpens Iron here in Ogden, Utah, and I went with that. I went with that name because it's from Proverbs.
Mhm.
Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron. So it has to do with a community of believers strengthening each other. Um, and that's exactly what it is. It's not just a rectangle with equipment in it. It's a team, And so when
Yeah.
people join our gym, they join our community, and they, in a big way, they join our family. And there's no amount of money that can kind of replace that, and having that in our lives, and knowing that we have a team of people to rely on, a team of people that are all going to push each other to get stronger. And what happens along the way is you end up making a bunch of friends that you would have never met otherwise, and realizing how much we all have in common, and how much we enjoy each other's company, and
Yeah.
how much we become friends with people that we on paper don't have a lot in common, or on paper we would have maybe never met. um, we end up hitting it off and having these pretty significant relationships with people who were not that long ago were total strangers, and now all of a sudden we're all really good friends because we share an interest, we share a hobby, but we also share this belief in each other, and this desire to help push each other forward. And that's why a gym is almost, it's weirdly, it is kind of like a ministry for for me, in that I get to help people maybe get stronger. And if they help me get stronger along the way, then that's great, and that's what we want,
Yeah.
and what we all kind of hope for.
I think I'm kind of similar to you as I scaled back on real estate. I mean, I'm still active and help those that reach out to me, but I'm not like seeking real estate anymore like I was. And, it's tough when you let go of, a good financial situation to put yourself in a ministry role. Like, my YouTube channel, I pour myself into that now. Like, you started a gym. I mean, it just, I think these types of things help us. We're helping others, and it's so rewarding in so many ways.
I certainly hope so. And they help me too. That's so I mean, I not
Yeah.
just financially, but also just having a team and being a part of a team. I think that's great. And money
Mm.
is such a tricky mistress. I mean, there's a lot of jobs out there that make a lot of money where there's a very, very high addiction rate. Um,
Yeah.
eh,
I mean, the real estate career, trust me, everybody wants to go to happy hour. If you look on all these like emails that I get, let's meet for drinks, let's do this, and it's all alcohol related. I mean, you get with lenders, it's about drinking. I mean, like, same with any career is,
oh, it's true.
alcohol driven.
It's true.
It's the easiest way to meet up with people. Nobody wants to ask, hey, do you want to go for a bike ride? Hey, do you want to go for a hike? It's, hey, let's go to happy hour.
It's a public place somewhere where people already kind of typically feel comfortable. Um, the social lubricant that people think alcohol is, personally, I think at this point it's terrible. Not just for the reasons that I don't drink anymore, but as far as meeting somebody for the first time with alcohol in your system, or trying to think about making a business deal or something while you're compromised. I don't. I'm not a big fan of indicting society for having two standards, um, between alcohol and drugs. Even though I think alcohol is probably the most. I think statistically, it's like by far the most dangerous, deadly drug ever. But I do think it's interesting that if you were like, "Hey, why don't we make a business deal over at this one place where we're going to put a fancy umbrella on our meth pipe?" Or, I'm going to do heroin, but I'm going to make it smell like lemonade. If you did that, nobody would show up. It's insane. And
It
when you
is.
say, "Hey, I'm going to go have a martini," or, "Oh, it's May. Let's go get margaritas." That's basically all you're doing. It's the same poison, just kind of dressed up different, and suddenly it's totally okay. Um,
Right.
and when you think about it like that, it's insane. It makes no sense.
Like, people applaud you for quitting, smoking cigarettes or the harder drugs, but yet when you quit drinking, people are like, "What's wrong with you?"
It's true. I honestly think sobriety's, in my observation, maybe it's just because my perspective has changed, but I think sobriety's gained a little bit more. It's a little bit less taboo. I think it seems to me that sobriety is a little bit more mainstream now than it was maybe 12 years ago or even before. I think that a lot of people, thanks to people like you, kind of making it cool, but also it's something that's a little bit less. It's a little bit less weird now than it was not
Yeah.
too long ago. I can remember being at work and having people tell me like, "Well, you don't drink?" why don't you drink? All right. And they would treat me different
Yeah.
because I don't drink. And they didn't know anything about how bad I was or any of that stuff. They just knew I didn't drink, and they just, to them, that just seemed really kind of weird. I think now maybe you deal with a little bit less than that. I think maybe you go to pretty much any workplace, and there's probably going to be a good chunk of people that don't drink for one reason or another, whether it's because some of us are sober addicts, or whether it's because of people in their, I don't know, religious upbringing or whatever it is, or maybe people are just not into.
Yeah, because you live in Utah, so you kind of you understand. So when I tell people that I don't drink living in Idaho, I'm like, but I still drink coffee, and everybody knows what I'm talking
Oh no,
about.
it's true. You know what? That it comes up, and we can have those conversations, and that's great. Because I certainly
Yeah,
drink coffee. We are new to Utah. I mean, I've only lived here for, well, I guess we've been here 7 years now. I lived in a
we've
lot.
been in Idaho for 7 years
Oh,
almost.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's super nice. I love it here. But when I got sober, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That was a tough place to get sober. I mean, Albuquerque's a kind of a rough city. There's a lot of alcohol issues. Um, just for as far, I think, DUIs per capita, and the different,
Huh.
I don't know. It's just New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a tough place to get sober in. I think there's probably certain places that are going to be easier, certain places that are going to be more difficult. But yeah, definitely, and maybe it is, just being in Utah. There's a lot fewer people who are going to go down the alcohol path like I did. But yeah,
Unless they're bandits. Maybe there's some moonshine bandits there. I don't know. Just joking. Like, cause you can't go to the stores and buy a certain percentage of alcohol, right? Like you have to, um, I mean, so I've heard. I've not ever bought alcohol in Utah, but I've heard that the percentage on a bottle is lower than some other states. Like it can't be above 4.5 or 5% or something like that, unless that changed.
I don't know. I've never bought alcohol in Utah because I've been sober since we lived here. But I do
Oh,
know, like,
yeah.
when you go to like an Applebee's and you sit at the bar to have like when we'll go, me and my wife will go and have like just a dessert, and we'll sit at the bar. It's not a regular bar. They don't just sit behind the bar and make drinks with their mixers or whatever. They have to go and make it somewhere else and then bring it to you. Or I mean, it is pretty weird. Um, as far as I understand, but Ben, I get to be blissfully ignorant about all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to touch, you said sobriety, it is becoming trendy. And then Joe Rogan just, came out publicly and said he has quit drinking. I mean, I didn't watch the podcast, so I don't know the whole backstory, but I know that that was like a huge thing. People started sending it to me. So I mean, if Joe Rogan is talking about not drinking, then I mean, how many people are going to follow his suit?
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I might have to go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I should probably watch the whole thing. I mean, we watch clips of his things because they're so long, but I mean, he has a very big impact on, the podcast world.
No, it's true. Absolutely. No, it's interesting. I might have to go watch that episode because
Especially like if he did carnivore, everybody else is going to try carnivore because he's doing it. He's quitting drinking. It's just it's crazy how somebody of such a high influence can influence people to maybe shift their mind of how they eat or how they drink.
I'm sure. I could tell you though, when I was drinking, it wouldn't have mattered if Joe Rogan or any, it could have been celebrities, sports heroes. My biggest hero in the world could have told me, "Hey, you probably need to stop drinking," and I'd be like, "Well, I love you,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to let you in for."
Exactly.
But I'm a hardcore alcoholic. If somebody who's on the fringe, somebody who's entertaining where they're going to go with their life, if that Joe Rogan podcast gets through to 1% of the people that could have become hardcore alcoholics like me,
Yeah.
then he's gonna have a huge impact for the better, one way or the other. So I'm all for that. I think it's great. Trendy as it might be, who knows? It might be the thing that keeps somebody from getting too crazy. So I,
Yeah.
I think I'm
And
all for
and
that.
And I always like to say, like, not everybody's stories are different. And I mean, I know people think that I just decided to just quit drinking one day. No, it was a process. I mean, I have quite the background with alcohol and how bad it was. I was starting to drink every single day, starting earlier. So some people, I feel if they haven't followed me on my whole journey, they don't realize the depths of drinking, the destruction it causes, and, some people do resonate with those that have those my liver failed, or I almost died, or I have 40 felonies. I mean, everybody has a different relationship with alcohol. Not one of our stories is the exact same. We all come from a different background, different place. Some start later in life, and, some quit earlier in life. I mean, everybody's story is so unique. So if, maybe my story doesn't resonate with, this person, but your story resonates and you help somebody quit drinking. I mean, you saved a life.
Yeah, as well as if you can lock and key with your message with somebody, um, and it's interesting that a lot of the reason I reached out to you again, I think I was shown your channel by a family member. I have been so useless in my own circle in helping people get sober. There's a handful of people that are very close to me, um, that that are not sober, that want to be, that I wish they were, that deal with addictions of one type or another. And no matter how much I think I might be trying to help, I've not been able to help. I've not been able to help them. Um, so it's great. I love the idea that a story, whether it's mine, yours, one of your other guests, Joe Rogan, whoever, will be able to help people, and that's great. It's tangible. Um, but I guess I would maybe selfishly just love to be able to help the couple people that I know in my life that actually
Mm,
need sobriety and can't quite get there.
I feel you.
So that and I'm sure you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. There's probably just kind of like that one person and you're like, I have infinite resources we can reach out to if you really want to get sober. Yeah, maybe one day, but and you just kind of never happens. That one day never comes. Um,
Right.
and that is it's very frustrating, but also it does kind of make you wonder if every now and then you kind of feel like, am I really helping anybody? Am I really doing anything, to help other people? Am I having any kind of an impact? Well, I don't know how much of an impact I've had kind of outside of those circles, and that's not something I need validated, or something I need people to say, "Hey, thanks, you helped me," whatever. Don't need that, but I would at the same time I would absolutely love to see this couple people in my life be able to get sober. I think that would be great because I care about them and I don't want them to continue to go through what I was going through. And I know how much it sucks. Alcohol ruins your brain, it ruins your life, and it really is. We try to put tangible examples out there exactly what it does to your life, but it's many ways. It's not the tangibles, it's the intangibles. It's the miserable state of mind we find ourselves in. Anxiety is awful. Anxiety makes you, and I'm talking about alcohol anxiety, or
Yeah.
withdrawal, or the kind of anxiety that makes you want to drink. It makes you afraid of the next minute. You can describe anxiety symptoms all you want and say, well, you shake and you don't sleep very well, and that's not the problem. The problem is what we go through on the inside. The problem is the inner turmoil of those types of anxieties. And when it comes to the anxieties you get to experience when you're an addict, when you're an alcoholic, um, the tangible, the demonstrable traits of those addictions are bad, but they're not even the worst part. It's what we go through on the inside that is
Mhm.
truly awful. It's kind of like what I was saying about jail. Jail's not that bad. It's knowing knowing how comfortable being in jail could become to somebody who was that close to their bottom in life is what's really scary. Um, Knowing that there's nothing on the outside. Hey, this is jail. It's not that bad. There's nothing on the outside for me, so I might as well just be in jail. That's what's really terrifying. That's what really causes that alcohol, um, related anxiety for me. It's thinking about that stuff.
Uh, I kinda like we watched, some cop shows and, like, drinking and driving accidents and some of these young people waking up in hospitals drunk, not knowing what they just did and how many people they just took their life because they were drinking and driving, and, I mean, it's just so sad that it has to come to people being taken from us, whether it be from somebody else or themselves to I mean, it's just so sad. Like, why can't it stop before it's too late?
I think one of the best things about what you're doing with your channel and others, as I said, I was pretty ignorant about the sobriety side of YouTube up until just recently. But one of the best things about that is it's raising awareness and allowing people to register that you can raise your bottom. It's not, there's a bunch of cliches, right? Like once you hit the bottom, stop digging, etc. Anybody in addiction in whatever situation can make a decision that that is their bottom. We don't all have to go
Mhm.
to prison. We don't all have to suffer a liver failure. We don't all have to have an esophageal burn that causes you to throw up blood every day for 6 months. We don't all have to have domestic violence charges filed against us. We don't all have to have a number of DUIs. We don't all have to um, go kill somebody with a vehicle. We don't all have to go through that. A lot of us choose to. We
Yeah.
don't have to. And then the more awareness and the more conversations we have about this, the more I hope maybe somebody watching might realize, okay, I'm not 100% sure if this is my bottom. Well, it can be. If this is the bottom, if you're pretty low and you wonder if there's somewhere lower to go, you don't have to keep digging. I mean, now can be the time. Um, whatever bottom, however low you think you are, that can be your bottom. Um, we don't all, yeah, like the what you said, like those people, they're young, they're ignorant, they're out thinking that they were doing the same thing everybody else is doing, out drinking and driving, and they find out that they killed somebody on the road, and they're still drunk, so they don't really like. We don't all have to go through that. A lot of us can stop short of that without having to deal with those kind of consequences.
Yeah. It's just sad that t we let such a substance destroy so many parts of our life, and, I mean, to be honest, the last 3.5 years, I've had many bottoms, but I just kept digging and digging until I decided that alcohol was no longer serving me, and my husband asked me just the other day, um I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I said, "Yes, when I quit drinking, I realized how toxic it was to me and my life, you, my kids." I mean, just what it was actually doing to me, just like social media, because he asked, "Will you go back to social media?" And I said, "I have no idea, but I don't crave social media right now because I'm off Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, whatever. I'm on YouTube." But when you realize something is so toxic to you, letting it go is so freeing. But a lot of people don't. They can't comprehend that. That sounds mean, but it's true. Like, they don't want to comprehend it, that something is so toxic. And somebody brought up a good point. They're like, sober or not, you made the choice. Sober or drunk, you made the choice. And it's like, we make the choices. And unfortunately, like, we can't always just blame it on alcohol, which it's so easy to do.
Well, it's true. I mean, you can make a pretty serious choice when you're under the influence that impacts a lot of people, including you, and you still have to deal with the consequences of that choice. And it won't be good enough to just say, "Wow, I'm going to stop drinking." You might have to say, "Wow, I'm going to stop drinking, and I have to go to prison." Oh, I'm going to stop drinking, and I have to have a major surgery because some part of my body has failed because I've poisoned it. Oh, I have to stop drinking, and I'm going to have to take seizure medication for the rest of my life because alcohol can ruin your brain and cause different types of like induced brain injuries just from being a horrible chemical. I mean, you get to deal with the, oh, I guess I'm going to have to stop drinking and get sober, and XYZ terrible consequence. If we were lucky, if everybody, and then I was one of those people. Don't get me wrong. I got a pretty good, a very very blessed recovery, and I didn't have to deal with that. But I mean, I guess I've had to deal with a little bit of the fallout over the years, and stuff, but I got my bottom was pretty high. Um, I would love to think that maybe somebody, might somebody, and then they don't have to tell me about it. I don't need to know, but if something I've done has helped somebody kind of raise their bottom and allow them to make that realization before they have to deal with those other consequences, then
Yeah.
I guess I feel like my job is done as far as being in, not done forever, but I feel like maybe I've at least had an impact on somebody in sharing my journey of recovery. Um,
I mean, I'm sure you have had lots of people come up to you, or I mean, I don't know. It's been 12 years of sobriety, and people come up maybe and say, "Do you want a drink?" Or you mentioned that you don't drink, and it's just so nonchalantly now. And maybe it starts like trickling in their brain. Maybe I should stop drinking, but then it trickles into the next person and the next person. Like it's a trickle effect. I mean, I've noticed that in my life. Some people have cut back tremendously on drinking, um, some not, but just, and I don't even like, I mean, just by setting an example, like you're setting an example, like I don't have to drink anymore. I'm not a drinker. I just choose not to drink, right? I mean, it's just simple as saying I don't drink.
I'm sure.
Like, why do we have to come up with these elaborate, like, excuses? I mean, can't use the "I'm pregnant" card. I mean, I never like, when I was doing 75 hard, yeah, I was like, "Oh, I'm doing 75 hard, I can't drink right now." But then somewhere along the lines, I decided I don't drink. I'm not a drinker. I was.
I think you're right. Setting an example is important. I gotta tell you, I have been pretty critical of 75 hard over the years, and I'm sure you will understand when I say that I know a lot of people who will do 75 hard kind of out of the blue, and they will stick with it, or they'll they'll do it, then on day 76 they go right back to whatever life they were doing before, and they're kind of unaffected by it. I'm obviously much more of a make a bunch of small changes, and before you know it, you've made a lot of big changes in your life. I don't love the reasoning that a lot of people give for doing 75 hard, but thanks to you, I'm kind of realizing, wait a minute, there might be other factors that I don't understand that would cause you to benefit from that. You never know what you're
But
going to learn.
so I didn't go into it with any reason. I did it because 8 of us were doing it. And that is the honest answer. I didn't go into it to lose weight, to quit drinking, and some people do go into it to lose weight, to quit drinking. It literally something changed in my brain along the way, and it was that switch, and I don't know if it was having to be extra disciplined or all the personal development I was reading. I don't know. I don't have an answer. Something literally just switched in my brain, and it took 3 or 4 weeks of not drinking to come to a realization that alcohol was no longer serving me. Hadn't hadn't I mean, if I didn't do 75 hard, I don't know if I would have ever quit drinking. I just don't know.
Well, I mean, you proved me wrong, because yeah, it's exactly it. You don't. I've been so critical about what I think people are failing to learn by doing 75 hard that I have been ignoring what it is that they may have learned. And in your case, you learned something very profound. Some people might learn something maybe a little bit less profound. Maybe they're not drinkers. Maybe they just learn that, oh wow, I have good results if I don't do XYZ. So when I'm on day 76, all I have to do is, maybe cut back on my gluten, or, something, whatever. Uh, so I have been critical because I've been ignorant about the idea that people will almost inevitably learn something throughout that process that they can carry over to the rest of their life. So yeah, you definitely changed my outlook on 75 hard and those types of things.
Somebody told me, "You should be a sober coach, you should be a 75 hard coach." I don't know. They go hand in hand because, I mean, you gotta do the work, and the work was all those tasks on 75 hard kept me sober. So, I mean, a lot of those tools that I learned along the way help me help other people. But it's not for everybody. A lot of people, I mean, I was very critical of it also. I never wanted to do it, but I did it because everybody else was doing it, and I wasn't going to be the only and I was not going to be the first one to fail. So,
That's great. That's great. That's That's as good a reason as any.
right?
That's perfect.
And it changed my life. And like I said, maybe it was just that little push that I needed. And I think maybe a lot of people need just that little extra push to realize that alcohol is not serving them or it's consuming too much of their life.
Um, can I ask, and feel free to cut this out, but does your husband is sober too, right?
Oh yeah, he actually quit Memorial Day weekend 2023. Like that Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, and but you don't think he was quite the level of romantic drinker you were?
Um we switched off like when we I mean, I was the worst one, but he had the potential to hold it together a lot better than me and not let it affect him like I let it affect me. Uh, I was the one always trying to find the alcohol. He could take it or leave it. So when he first quit, it was really hard because I felt like he was judging me for still drinking,
Hmm.
and that was hard. But romanticizing it, I don't think he ever did. My daughter said something to him like, "Daddy, isn't that killing you?" And he never touched it again.
Oh, wow.
So,
Nice. Only reason I ask is because when we talk about, like you mentioned, just doing 75 hard because of kind of peer pressure, a positive application of peer pressure. The idea of quitting drinking by yourself when you're in a relationship where you are one of you does, one of you doesn't, is again, it's something I will never be able to relate to.
same.
And I don't know what that would be like, but I can only imagine if you're married or if you're in a very close relation or just a very good friend, sibling, something like that, and you say, okay, we're gonna quit together. We're gonna hold each other accountable. I'm I'm guessing that that would probably be very effective. And the opposite of that would be if it was just one of you and the other one wanted to continue to use. I'm guessing that that would make a very difficult thing much more difficult.
I know people personally that one will quit drinking and then the other won't, and then one enables the other and picks on them, and they end up it's just this vicious cycle. I'm gonna quit, you don't quit, and then vice versa, the other one's quitting, and, like, rarely is it together, which is where I think the success doesn't like, that's it won't happen. But then I've had people comment many time or a lot of people, pretty regularly, "Me and my husband quit together," or "Me and my wife quit together," or some people are successful so far. Like, "Hey, I'm sober, my husband still drinks here and there, but he's cutting back." I mean, I think it just starts with, like, just keep that pattern going of not drinking, and eventually the other one will follow, but I couldn't imagine him still drinking when I had first quit drinking, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, now if he was to drink, would be like, "I'm still gonna be sober." But in the beginning, no.
Yeah. I think getting sober together is probably about the most awesome and the most awesome thing that two people could ever do together, and also would really probably bring you closer because just exactly how difficult early sobriety is and how important it is to have a good support and to be each other's supports together. To me, that sounds like it would be absolutely amazing.
I was a month and a half behind him.
Well, that's not a very long time. That's cool.
So,
No, that
yeah.
I hope to be exposed to more people. I hope to meet and be exposed to more people who've kind of had that experience because I want to be a cheerleader for that. Not just people getting sober, but the idea of couples getting sober together, to me
Yeah.
just seems like the ultimate relationship flex, if you will. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah.
And
No,
conversely, I
I
think if you
agree.
weren't getting sober together, it would be so incredibly difficult for one of you to get sober and not the other.
Well, he's mad at me, I'm mad at him, I'm mad at him for not wanting to have fun with me, he's mad at me for, being ridiculous still. I mean, it's just it's a vicious cycle if you don't stop together.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But if you can do it without your spouse on board, just do it. I mean, don't let their drinking deter you from quitting drinking. Just keep trying, I guess. I mean, not I guess, but just keep trying. That's all you can do.
Yeah, no,
And hope for the best and that one day they will follow suit and you both can be sober together.
yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't in that position. I had support. Don't get me wrong. I had friends. I had support. I had um, several things going for me. I wasn't totally alone, but I was alone in my sobriety journey. I was the only one who was facing legal consequences. I was the only one whose health was suffering. I was the only one who was responsible for my dog and worrying about her, being okay. So I recovered in not in a relationship, and it was very difficult. But and I wouldn't be sober if it weren't for God's, direct intervention in my life. It just does not make sense. It really is a miraculous mathematical equation that He put all those things, excuse me, in my life to help me um, get and stay sober. So I definitely had a lot of support. Um, but as far as being in a relationship in that type of situation, like I'm encouraged for people who can do it together. And I only hope that people who are struggling to do it on their own in a relationship with somebody who's not recovering, I hope that, as you described, um, if you do the right thing long enough, they will eventually get on board. And I hope that's the trend. I hope
Right.
that's what we see. And I hope to meet more people who are sober. I hope to meet more people um, who have had these diverse sobriety journeys. I could tell you strength sports, so be it powerlifting or strongman or whatever, is probably I shouldn't throw a number out there because I don't want to sound like I'm kind of outing a whole community, but there's a high percentage of people in recovery, whether it be alcohol or other drugs or whatever, in strength sports, because I think that a lot of us come at these sports in a kind of addictive way, which is kind of
Mhm.
what you need to be good at any sport. You have a couple of different paths that might get you there, and one of them is recovery. So I'm a firm believer that people in recovery, recovered alcoholics, are the best people in the world. Non-recovered alcoholics um, have to do what they have to do, and they get to deal with um, what they get to deal with. Not too many not too many true alcoholics really get to grow old. Not too many true alcoholics really have meaningful long-term relationships. Not too many alcoholics really have a whole lot of success in professional or whatever areas of their lives. You could be a functional alcoholic, I guess, to some degree, and we all know them. Um, but they're probably never really living to what I would think would be the fullest, as much as I know
Right.
that I get to experience now being
Yeah.
in sobriety.
That's so well said.
I think that's true. If somebody's wrong, I'm sure they'll tell me.
Yeah.
But if I'm wrong, I'm sure people will tell me, and that's cool. But that's just been my observation. I mean, it- the harsh reality is you don't see too many people over 40 who weigh 400 pounds or 450 pounds. You don't see too many people in their 50s who, uh, I don't know, live with. You don't see like smokers or whatever, anybody who's kind of got this um, this major chemical drag on their life.
Mhm.
They don't usually get there. They don't usually get to make it. And if you want to make it, and if you want to make it in a way that's bigger and better than anything that you've had in addiction, you know, gosh, it's just getting sober and staying sober is just the one thing you kind of have to do first. And it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not
Oh,
simple. It's not even a simple concept to describe. I mean, that first, as we were talking about at the beginning there, that first year of firsts, I mean, it is a tough road to truly recover. But once they do, once I did anyway, I realized just how worth it was. Um,
good.
and and moreover, I realized just how sad and unfulfilling my life was in addiction. Um,
Mhm.
I think I kind of gave the example. I'm not when I said, like, I remember sitting in my apartment watching a DVD I'd probably seen 10 times, with like a bottle of bottom shelf booze at like 3 p.m. Probably drinking as fast as I could so I could hurry up and pass out and do it all over again the next day, and having this depressing revelation that, realization, whatever, this very depressing realization that I'm probably never gonna meet a girl. I'm probably never gonna, whatever. That's really something that went through my head. I mean, I really did think, hey, this is it. It's not going to get any better. Where I'm at now is as good as it's ever going to get, and it's only going to get worse very quickly. And I had accepted that.
Too many people do.
Yeah,
I mean, it's true.
it's true, and they don't have to. And gosh,
Oh,
I'm trying to pray for all of them because
right.
somebody had to have been praying for me.
Yeah. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I loved our conversation. Can they find you on social media, or do you?
Yes, absolutely. My Instagram it's Justin underscore the underscore technician is my
Okay,
Instagram. And I also have a YouTube that's me and mostly just strongman stuff, nothing serious. But I don't know. I post a lot of shorts
so
on
that's
there. They're
fun.
pretty fun. Yeah. And I'm always down to talk about recovery. Always down to talk about strength training. If anybody gets, as I said, if anybody if anybody watches a video of me lifting an Atlas stone at, 43 years old, um, thinking, when just, 13 years ago, I thought I was probably gonna, live for another 6 months and that's it. Then you know what? I hope they do. That would be great. That would make my day.
Yeah. Well, we will put that in the description, and I really appreciate you talking with me
I
today.
appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.